It was one of the most anticipated political meetings in years. Behind closed doors in Anchorage, Alaska, Russian President Vladimir Putin and former U.S. President Donald Trump sat down for nearly 3 hours. The topic that dominated every minute of that conversation? Ukraine. And out of that meeting came something no one expected. The clearest outline yet of what the Kremlin might accept as a possible peace deal. A deal that, if ever agreed to, could reshape not only Ukraine's future, but the entire balance of power in Europe. According to a detailed Reuters report, citing multiple sources close to the Kremlin, Putin has laid out a new set of demands. These demands are centered around 3 pillars: the fate of eastern Ukraine's Donbass region, Ukraine's NATO ambitions, and the presence of Western troops on Ukrainian soil. What makes this moment different is that Putin appears to have scaled back from his earlier, much broader goals. Back in June of 2024, Moscow's demands were sweeping. Full recognition of Russia's claims over 4 Ukrainian provinces, Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Essentially, Russia wanted Ukraine to give up vast swaths of its territory. But the new proposal looks more targeted. Now, the Kremlin's focus is on cementing its control over the Donbass, which includes the provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk, while freezing the battle lines further south. U.S. intelligence estimates suggest Russia already controls nearly 90% of the Donbass, as well as large portions of Kherson and Zaporizhia. Under this new framework, Ukraine would be expected to formally cede the remaining areas of the Donbass, while Russia would halt its offensive and potentially return small occupied areas in Kharkiv, Sumy, and Dnipropetrovsk. On the surface, this looks like a step back from Moscow's maximalist goals. But there's a catch, one that makes the deal far more complicated. Putin isn't just talking about land. He's demanding that Ukraine give up its NATO ambitions entirely, adopt permanent neutrality, and accept that no Western troops or peacekeepers will ever be stationed on Ukrainian territory. On top of that, the Kremlin wants legally binding guarantees that NATO will never expand further east. For Kyiv, that's a non-starter. President Volodymyr Zelensky has been crystal clear. Ukraine will not surrender internationally recognized territory, and NATO membership remains written into the country's constitution as a strategic goal. To give that up would not just be a political defeat. It would be seen as national betrayal. Still, the fact that such a proposal even exists is notable. Some observers see the Alaska summit as the closest the war has come to a genuine opening for peace in more than 3 years. And Donald Trump, who has often described the war as a bloodbath, seems eager to play the role of peacemaker. According to the same sources, Trump is already planning a direct meeting between Putin and Zelensky, followed by a trilateral summit that would include himself as mediator. But the path forward is anything but clear. Analysts point out that Russia's demand for control of the Donbass remains politically impossible for Kyiv. The war has hardened Ukrainian public opinion, and territorial concessions would almost certainly be rejected by the majority of the population. Then there's the question of leadership. Zelensky's presidential term technically expired in May 2024, but elections were suspended due to the war. Putin has repeatedly questioned Zelensky's legitimacy, arguing he has no authority to sign a peace deal. Kyiv, however, insists that under wartime law, Zelensky remains the rightful president. That dispute alone could derail any negotiation. Meanwhile, skepticism is growing in Europe. Leaders of Britain, France, and Germany have all voiced doubts that Putin truly wants peace, pointing out that Russia still occupies about 1/5 of Ukraine's territory, an area roughly the size of the U.S. state of Ohio. From their perspective, the Alaska summit may be less about peace and more about buying time for Moscow. Behind the scenes, the groundwork for this meeting was laid by Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, who met with Putin in Moscow earlier in August alongside Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov. In that meeting, Putin reportedly signaled a willingness to compromise, offering a preview of the peace framework later presented in Alaska. Several possible paths are now being discussed. One is a 3-way agreement involving Russia, Ukraine, and the United States, later formalized at the United Nations Security Council. Another is reviving the Istanbul talks of 2022, which had explored Ukrainian neutrality in exchange for international security guarantees. But despite these ideas, the gaps remain enormous. For Putin, Withdrawing from the Donbass is out of the question. For Zelensky, giving up any territory is the same as surrender. And for Trump, the stakes are political as much as they are diplomatic. Framing himself as the man who can end Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II could become a centerpiece of his political comeback. So what does all this mean? On one hand, this is the first time in years that Moscow has presented something resembling a negotiable framework, even if it's still far from what Ukraine could accept. On the other hand, it underscores just how difficult peace remains, even with powerful mediators in the mix. The Alaska summit may go down in history as a turning point, or as just another failed attempt in a war that shows no sign of ending soon. The choice is now facing Ukraine. Russia and the West will determine not just how this war ends, but what kind of Europe emerges from it. Because when you strip away the diplomatic language and political maneuvering, the reality is stark. Russia wants land and security guarantees. Ukraine wants freedom, sovereignty, and the right to choose its future. And the world is left asking, can those two visions ever truly meet? What do you think? Could this be the first real step toward peace, or just another political game? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update on the world's most important stories.